Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, hey, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Alrighty, hello and welcome, folks. It is time to dive into today's topic, crafting a secure, resilient, and cost-effective IaaS across multi-cloud. That's right, we're not just discussing the level of security, but how to make it an affordable and sensible choice for your organization. I know you are all ready and pumped to get started, so we'll just go through a last few bits of info and then get our speakers on out here with us. My name is Mackenzie Puddesy, and I am a moderator here at Actual Tech Media. My friends and fellow moderators, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward are here with us on live chat today, and Keith will also be interviewing our keynote speaker shortly for a live discussion. If it's your first EcoCast with me, it's great to meet you, and I want to thank you for being here. Now, I've got a little something more for you today than incredibly valuable information. I've got some prizes. So today on the EcoCast, you could win one of three $300 Amazon gift cards that will be given away to 3 lucky winners who are here, present, and live with us at the EcoCast today. And as mentioned in that housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab if you have any questions about that. And hey, with that last little thing, we are ready to rock. To kick things off in style, I'm so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Dan Sullivan, who will be opening up our minds to this topic and setting the stage for today. As I mentioned, Keith Ward is going to interview Dan and join in on this lively discussion. So thanks for being here, both of you. And with that, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Ward with Actual Tech Media, and joining me now is Dan Sullivan. Now, Dan's a cloud architect and author who has many years of experience in the field. And today, Dan will be talking to us about infrastructure as a service considerations in multi-cloud environments. Dan, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, Keith. Oh, it's great to be here again.
Always good to talk to you. So let's dive right in. Now, this event today is all concerned about infrastructure as a service in these multi-cloud environments. So what special concerns are there for building a solid IaaS in a multi-cloud environment?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say it's important to understand whatever your driving business problems are. You don't want to be building a multi-cloud IaaS with just kind of vague ideas that this is like a new kind of architecture and we should be building it. There really should be some drivers behind it because there are just too many options, but the drivers will constrain you. So you want to think about that. You want to, of course, think about cost controls and security and network complexity. From a technical implementation perspective. And then from an application data perspective, you want to think about things like data location, data sovereignty issues are big from a compliance perspective, but also, the cost of moving data maybe across multiple regions or between different IaaS providers can be significant. So you want to kind of map out what are the sort of cost benefit trade-offs between using different locations and different IaaS providers. So those are just some of the factors.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take one quick step back, and we actually didn't talk about any kind of definitions. In just a few words, how would you describe infrastructure as a service, say, compared to like a SaaS, software as a service?
Oh, yeah, good question. Well, infrastructure as a service, basically what we're doing is we're provisioning what we would think of as things like servers and disks and other types of, say, network devices, maybe things like routers, except these are essentially all virtualized, as opposed to a SaaS where we're actually picking up, say, maybe subscribing to a service, maybe a financial services a financial service that our finance office use. We're not in when we're working with a SaaS, we don't care whether this is running on Linux or Windows servers or things like that. We really care about what does the software do and how do I run my, how do I close my books at the end of the month. So the focus is really different. With IaaS, we're really working with the Legos that allow us to build our systems.
Got you. Thanks for that. Okay. So what are some of the most common mistakes you see in the planning stages? Now, something like IaaS, it takes a lot of planning when you're talking about a multi-cloud environment. So since this is an area you're in a lot, what do you see kind of over and over that people do when it comes to planning?
I'd say the single biggest concern in terms of mistakes is underestimating the complexity of what you're dealing with. And there are multiple dimensions. Networking can get really complicated really quickly. You're dealing with different network providers, you're dealing with different infrastructure providers, and the sort of the logic for how you construct, say, virtual private clouds can get fairly complicated. So I would invest in good network architect early on in the process. Some other issues that come up are maybe not appreciating the challenges around security. Things like having a unified identity management system makes it much easier to be able to, say, provision and deprovision users and give them the authorization to systems that they need. Not having sufficient automation or thinking about automation early on is another issue. It's fairly straightforward to work with maybe a small set of servers and infrastructure devices, but you can quickly scale, especially when you're, maybe working in a clustered environment. And now, you might be working with 10 servers or 10 nodes at 1 minute and then hundreds of nodes the next. There's a huge difference in managing those if you are trying to do it all manually. So automation is really key. So it's really important to have that sort of think about that as early as possible as well.
Oh, 100%. Now, you had mentioned in that answer, Dan, you briefly touched on security. I'd like to dive in a little bit deeper on that because when you're talking about multi-cloud and you're talking about infrastructure as a service, the attack surface is just gigantic at that point. So many touch points, so much that feels exposed. So go over some more of what you would consider some of the most important security considerations in this scenario.
Okay. Well, I'll say, one good thing about security is the principles apply equally well in multi-cloud IaaS as they do if you were building an on-premise. So the issues you have to think about, there's really nothing new under the sun in this area. You were going to be thinking about identity management and access controls. We're going to be thinking about networking, which we touched on a little bit. But again, it's the level of complexity is higher in a multi-cloud IaaS environment. So you have to watch for that. We have to think about things like encryption, both encryption at rest and when the data is at rest. We want to, and again, with multiple vendors, you might have to think about this in multiple ways. I'm like encryption at rest encryption in transit is pretty straightforward. We're using TLS. Encryption at rest, maybe a little more complicated unless you're, say, managing all of your own keys. So part of the security consideration is what are you going to do and what are you going to depend on an IaaS provider for? Maybe manage the keys or manage key management infrastructure. I think also with regards to security, you always want to kind of keep an eye on compliance and how do you know you're in compliance and how can you demonstrate you're in compliance? And again, within one IaaS provider, that might be fairly straightforward, but when you're working across multiple ones, it gets more complicated. So you want to sort of minimize the number of tools that you need to be able to demonstrate you're in compliance. Again, yeah, I think I had mentioned network security is a key piece. And then also from an operations perspective, you want to think about your software developers. Do you have things like a secrets vault? So it's very easy for developers to be able to keep secrets securely and not, say, use environment variables or, hope no one does this anymore, but puts passwords into source code or something like that. And then there's also the monitoring. Like if you have a CI/CD pipeline, are you scanning the images, say, of the containers that are being built before you deploy them? So there are a lot of factors, but basically it's every part of your process and your life cycle. There's some security element to it. So you just want to kind of think about the full, end-to-end process that you're running, and think about security from multiple levels and at each step.
And right, it to me, so much of it keeps coming back to complexity, the
Yep.
importance of automation and things like that. All right, Dan. So let's skip ahead a little bit for our final question. Once you've got your IaaS up and running,
hmm
things are going along, everything is installed, and you're operational now. You need to maintain it going forward. So, what metrics at this point are important to be keeping an eye on in terms of the overall health of your system?
Well, some key ones are going to be things around resource utilization, and that's both from a cost perspective, but also from a more like from a technology perspective. If there's a sudden spike in resource requirements, that could indicate something. Either there's, you're having a great day and your business is booming, or it could
Right.
be, it could be an indicator of something like the beginning of a DDoS attack, or maybe there's a compromise in a system, or there's some other factor, something isn't working, something's broken in maybe one of your data pipelines. So there could be issues. So you want to just make sure, look for anomalies in resource utilization. You mentioned metrics. It's really critical to monitor metrics. Also, logging can provide a lot of information, especially when you're troubleshooting and you're trying to understand, okay, I had this spike, what caused it? And one of the nice things about logging is you can also use logs as a basis for generating metrics. So if you're starting to see a lot of a particular type of log message, that might be an indicator of some anomalous issue that needs investigation. And then also with regards to metrics, you want as much of a single pane of glass with regards to observability as possible. So if you can observe across your multi IaaS providers and be able to look at these different metrics and have dashboards that allow you to drill in, to one IaaS provider if you need to, that's really kind of like the ideal scenario. So these are some of the things, as well as sort of factors, like the things like throughput and latency are, again, these are probably the same things you monitored when you were working in an on-prem situation. So in some ways, observability is like security. It's similar in IaaS in that the principles are the same, but it's the complexity that we have to be careful about. So that's where automation comes in. I would say that's, if I could leave one thing, it would be automate, and early and often.
And again, that to me reinforces the importance of that single pane of glass. If
Yeah.
you've got to be scrolling through 6 screens to find stuff, well, that's not going to happen.
Right. No.
Quite often, or if it does, you're gonna hit alert fatigue. You're gonna have it's just too much to manage. And so the fewer screens you have to be looking at, the more that information can be condensed, and the important stuff surfaced to you when you need to know it, the better. So, Dan, this has been so much fun to talk with you today and to learn about some of these important considerations for IaaS in a multi cloud environment. I want to thank you for being on with us today and for giving us such wonderful insight into this issue.
Well, thanks, Keith. You're welcome. And I hope it is helpful, and I look forward to joining in again.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Keith, Dan, that was really great. Such a complex topic that we're approaching today, and this really got me thinking. I'm always in sponge mode during these webinars, looking to soak up all of the information coming my way. How about you folks out there? Are you in sponge mode today? I hope so. Now, I have a question for you all, just to be sure you're all awake and alive and enthusiastic out there. So just see the poll that's up and answer, what's your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? Again, you may not know, maybe you're still just thinking about it, and we're just trying to get a lay of the land to see where you're all at today. And with that, thanks for taking the time to answer. I'll leave it up for maybe 20 more seconds. And remember to send in your questions, comments, and I encourage you to be interactive today. Today's EcoCast is short and sweet, but absolutely packed with valuable information. Other than our keynote, we have just one speaker today to shed light on this topic and then give you a little bit of extra time to spend your days. So how's that sound? That said, we may have a few extra minutes for questions today, so please send in all of your questions through the chat. And a reminder that there is a best question prize on today's EcoCast. Now, without further ado, please welcome from the Rubrik team, Drew Russell, Technical GTM Lead, SaaS and Cloud. Drew, the stage is yours. Are you ready?
I'm ready to rock. I'm looking
All
forward
right.
to seeing who comes up with that best question award too. So looking forward to that part for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you take it away, and then I'll hop back in for Q&A.
Yeah, perfect. So let me just spend a couple of seconds kind of level setting the problem statement that we see today and kind of where we're focused around it from the rubric lens. I'll try to keep this as vendor agnostic as possible and really just focus around some of the conversations we have with our customers across the globe here. So the primary platform we have on Rubrik is called the Rubrik Security Cloud. It's very much focused around this concept of cyber resilience. And the way we look at that is, in essence, in today's world, it's not a matter if you're going to be attacked, not a matter of if you're going to be a breach, it's when it's going to happen. So it's all about how do you respond to that. And I think that the most succinct, simple viewpoint of this actually comes from Palo Alto, from their CEO, Nikesh. And this is from their last quarterly report where he was talking about, the Palo Alto customer base and viewing how they're spending their budgets from an IT infrastructure perspective, from a security perspective. And there's a couple of pieces I'll highlight. So that first line, he was talking about how they're seeing their customers spend more on cybersecurity than IT. So IT being like the classic operations infrastructure viewpoint. If you've ever looked at the stats here around that, you kind of realize how crazy of a statement that is. And by that, I mean, it's historically been IT is drastically higher budget spend than cybersecurity. That's just the reality of today. But because of all the, call it broadly categorized ransomware headlines we're seeing, the cybersecurity spend is now outpacing some of the more IT operation side. The problem is, and you kind of move down to the center quote here, and again, the last line, we're spending more and more on cybersecurity, but the number of breaches continue to rise. And I think the important part on that line, it's not that we continue to see breaches, it's that we're continuing to see them at an accelerated pace. I'll have a couple examples of this here in a second, but it's a telling conversation or telling problem we all deal with as an industry. Spending more, but what that results is a big game of whack-a-mole where we solve the problem of the day, problem of the week, but we wait a couple hours and a new one pops up, and it's a very, very tedious, tiresome process. Directly in line with that increase in spending, nobody wants to keep spending money, right? I haven't met a single customer where one of their primary initiatives is how do I reduce the amount of money I'm spending in the cloud? So overall, as an industry, what we've seen is spending more and more on cybersecurity. It's not working. We're seeing more attacks than ever. And we're also worried about reducing budget in these contexts. So it's a very, very difficult problem to have. And that's how we view this concept of cyber resilience, of how do we take a different approach around this in tandem with the traditional perimeter security and giving an answer for kind of these problem statements. The other really interesting is probably not the right word here because we all have to deal with the downstream repercussions of this, is in today's world, ransomware takes two flavors and they're really merged together into this single viewpoint, all focused around this concept of double extortion, where historically it's all been about these encryption attacks and being able to, in essence, hold you ransom to say, if you want to decrypt your data, give us X amount of money. But if I start thinking about the cloud space even more, and I'll put SaaS into this categorization as well, not extortion, exfiltration is the name of the game. It's way easier to move your data outside of your system than it is to deploy these classic encryption events. But all that being said, it's almost always being paired together, right? The more that they can push you to pay the ransom, the more opportunity they're going to do it. So it's all about how do I solve these problems simultaneously. The encryption type of attacks are called easier to solve than exfiltration. You know, with the encryption attacks, if you have a great cyber recovery solution in place, right, we can get you back up and running. The problem with exfiltration is, you know, once it's gone, what can you do, right? There's no big recovery button from that. Your data is out in the wild. You're going to see the issues with it across the board. So it's a more challenging problem because it's all about proactively finding the risk. Like I talked about, we're seeing headline after headline, right? We're investing more and more in this perimeter security, but we've all seen these headlines come up every day. The other kind of interesting part, at least from my perspective, is when I first started having these conversations with our customers, you know, call it 5 years ago, it was taking weeks to exfiltrate your data from your environment, right? They'd live in there, they would do reconnaissance, they would get the ins and outs of it, explore. But in the latest attacks today, it's happening within hours, right? If they can get to your data, it doesn't matter all those details they previously find, because data is data, right? There's issues no matter what they're seeing. And the SEC has come in, you know, California has their own regulations, and it's really confusing this ecosystem even more and more. You know, if I focus on the SEC side, if you're a public company, you have 4 days to disclose a quote unquote material cybersecurity incident. They don't actually define what material means, so it's up to everybody's interpretation. But if you get it wrong, there's massive fines and massive issues that come into play. And then directly in line with that, the risk of this is that you're dealing with an all-time high of the cost of a data breach, up to almost $4.5 million on average. We're seeing way higher numbers on this across the board. Just within, you know, call it the last week and a half, major headlines around this. So the top portion of the slide is, you know, again, an industry viewpoint of what we're seeing out there. Top left is CrowdStrike, top right is Mandiant. CrowdStrike actually has a great marketing term around this, cloud conscious threat actors, where they are focusing more and more efforts around the cloud and SaaS world because there is so much data out there. There's always been this native perception that, oh, if I'm in AWS, oh, I'm in Microsoft, I'm secure. I don't have to take this seriously. Not to say that I don't have to take it seriously, but I don't have to do additional works. You know, all these on-prem controls in place, there's always an assumption that those just magically transfer into the cloud environment. So the lack of security in those spaces is becoming, you know, one of the reasons why it's a popular target. The bottom row headlines, I should say, is some major headlines around this. Microsoft Azure was compromised in the Microsoft environment, right? It wasn't just a generic Microsoft Azure, you know, customer. Microsoft themselves, every control you can think of underneath their sun, right? They're spending billions and billions of dollars securing the environment, and they were so compromised. The biggest one to me is the United Healthcare Change Health attack. And you know why I say that is, you know, I see these headlines every day. It's almost impossible for me to keep track of them. But the unique aspect of the United Healthcare attack is we're seeing not only what the business impact is, but we're seeing the end user impact, right? Our healthcare, our prescription, our doctors are all talking about this type of attack. Like, the simplest way I view about this is my dad knows about this attack because it's on, you know, the NBC nightly news. Like, that's how prevalent it is. And it's really become a major wake-up call for board-level initiatives to drive these conversation pieces. We're seeing more and more conversations driven specifically around this. An interesting article around solving these challenges comes directly from the Amazon CISO. He had a great blog post around it where he asked, or basically said, these are the board level questions that everybody should be asking. And I kind of simplified it a little bit. If you look at the article, I think there's about 7 of these, but really what it boils down to is first and foremost, what's out in your environment? How do you understand that? What is the risk associated with those? And then from there, who has access? How many layers of protection? If we're attacked, how do I respond? All of these are very, very simple questions that aren't any, mind-blowing technical conversation piece. But the reason why, we're seeing these type of questions still being asked is because it comes down to visibility. They're so difficult to answer because of this concept of data sprawl or IaaS sprawl or whatever buzzword you want to put into the mix here. It's difficult to understand where your data lives today, whether you're in a AWS Azure shop, GCP AWS shop. SaaS is everywhere. Microsoft 365, Salesforce, Workday, you name it. I mean, I'm seeing more and more customers saying we're not cloud first, we're SaaS first. And then there's the sleeping giant in the conversation, the on-prem data centers, where most organizations still have a plethora of data that's just not going away. I've talked to customers who are the AWS poster child on usage. Every blog post they have is we're all in on AWS. AWS is marketing them. But when you talk to them, it's, oh yeah, I still have these data centers. I still have my own footprint that I need to worry about. And that's a common theme across the board. So the way we look at this and tying it all back to this cyber resilience conversation is there's 2 aspects of this. Really focused around preventing both of those encryption and double exfiltration attacks from becoming immaterial impacts. And they're really all tied together from a single lens. And you have to have these intertwined, intermingled from that perspective as well. So first and foremost, the most important part that we can provide you is that visibility into your hybrid cloud data. So the way I always describe this from like an analogy perspective is, in essence, what we want to do is create this heat map that allows you to say, if I was a threat actor, or if I was implementing cyber resilience, or if I'm implementing artificial intelligence, Gen AI, LLM strategies internally, what do I need to be concerned about? And being able to really, for the first time in most organizations I talk with, provide that visibility, right? That's the base layer we want to do. Then once we have that visibility in place, what can you do with it? How do I have these guardrails in place specifically designed around data that says, this is where I'm vulnerable. These are the holes I need to plug. And then taking that a step further and saying, here's where I'm seeing anomalous activity. Here's where I see a user that's never accessed an S3 bucket with a large amount of sensitive information. And oh, by the way, they're downloading it to a laptop, right? Probably not a normal day-to-day operation. Could be normal, could also be exfiltration, but how do you identify that? And just as importantly, how do I put all of your data, so moving down to this third bullet point here, how do I move all your data into a secure, call it data vault that says this is a fully immutable copy that no matter what is always going to be available for recovery? And how do I ensure that those data vaults are not being accessed in a way that I wouldn't expect? Last but not least is the business conversation, right? Going back to that Palo Alto slide, how do I reduce my cloud costs in those ecosystems? So there's a lot of very, very simple things that you can do that are also hard to operationalize, right? If you've ever looked at these cloud spaces, we'll stick with AWS as an example, right? There's S3 and there's Glacier. It's way cheaper to put your data in Glacier. So little simple stuff like that can result in quite literally 20 to 30% instantaneous savings on your yearly spend in the cloud space by leveraging those type of technologies. So this is how we approach this cyber resilience conversation of identifying your risk, giving you the ability to plug those holes before they occur. And if an attack actually happens, how do I ensure that you're available from a recovery standpoint, and giving you the nice big green easy button on that side too. So that's all I had in place from a slideware perspective. Hopefully short, sweet, give you guys an understanding of some of the challenges that we see with all of our customers across the board. But would love to open it up to any potential questions you guys may have around that as well.
All right. So nice, Drew. Thank you for that presentation. That was great. I love the kind of current climate and context you worked into that. Always interesting to see rather than just theory. And we definitely did have a few questions come in. So I'm just going to pop up a poll that we'll leave up here while we're doing some Q&A. So what additional information would you all in the audience like about the Rubrik solution? Just go on ahead and answer that. And Drew, if you're ready, let's start some Q&A.
Sure.
Okay. So first question I've got for you is, how do you handle both on-prem and cloud?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so really what it boils down to is we have what we think of as an outpost account. So the outpost account is, in essence, how do we, call it access your data, for lack of a better term, that allows us to do the analysis of it. So at a base level, like data classification. So if I'm talking like an AWS or Azure environment, we would use a dedicated account or dedicated subscription, deploy this outpost infrastructure in there, and do all the analysis within that ecosystem. Exact same concept in the data center space. In this case, because there's not all those cloud benefits like the native APIs, things like that, we would deploy a physical piece of hardware. Think of it as like a 2U appliance that would run as an outpost in your data center environment. It's at a simplest term, a data ingester. That way we can look at all the data at a VMware layer, a NetApp layer, without actually installing any agents as part of it, and then kind of automatically merge that into a single view from a visibility standpoint as well.
Right. Awesome. A bit of a follow-up to that is, how does this fit into LLM conversations?
Yeah, good question. I had briefly
conversions.
I love it. For me personally, it's gone from the buzzword of the day to actually seeing that conversation piece come up in every customer I talk with, and every customer who wants to implement, call it OpenAI, Llama 2, Mistral. But the biggest challenge is, how do I actually do that? How do I ensure that, the intern who started yesterday, who may be using my model, how do I make sure he doesn't see our CEO's data? Or how do I make sure social security numbers is part of that? So while, if you look at the cybersecurity side, it's what data is out there, who has access, who is accessing. The exact same thing applies to the LLM models. So the technology that we've traditionally used for cybersecurity purposes, in essence, put a slight twist on it, and it allows you to actually start implementing these models and feeding your data into them at scale without having to worry about the replications around it. So, whoever asked that question, there's a whole deeper, story we can tell around this and help kind of guide some of that as well. So we'd love to follow up with whoever asked that as well.
All right, and we'll pass that on after as well for you. A couple more questions here I've got from Dan. Does Rubrik Cloud Vault provide security for Microsoft business applications like their CRM and ERP?
No, not on that side. So think of, for Microsoft, it'd be like Microsoft 365, anything in the Azure space. The devil's in the details. If some of those are like using Azure as the backend, we would cover it, but like no direct integration with those type of tools.
Okay, got it. This one's from Nancy. It's a little bit longer, so let's see what we got. It says,
awesome.
In transitioning... Oh, go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was just saying awesome. Love long questions.
Perfect. So yes, Nancy's asked, in transitioning towards the next generation data centers or adopting a hybrid cloud approach, How does Rubrik's solution cater to the evolving requirements and cost considerations while also ensuring cyber resilience? Could you elaborate on the key components organizations should consider, both from a technical requirement standpoint and in terms of cost effectiveness when evaluating such a transition, with a focus on maintaining cyber resilience?
Wow. I feel like I could spend
I
2
warned you,
hours.
I was like,
I love
okay,
it.
it's a big
I
question.
love it.
We can break it down, perhaps.
I mean, I think the simplest way to look at that is, I mean, data is data, right? If you think about it like from a threat perspective, it doesn't matter where that data lives. So the way we approach it is you have to have a single source of truth across all of those environments. Otherwise, it's impossible to understand that risk across the board. And just by its nature, understanding that risk almost always leads into a deletion of data conversation, right? The best type of data from a security perspective is no data. So it's all about how do I identify, call that redundant data that would allow you to improve your security posture and decrease cost at the same time. So that's my quick gut reaction to the question. But again, that's first of all, I love the in-depth nature of it, and I can always follow up more in depth around it as well. I mean, it's a complex conversation at least.
Amazing. Yeah, that one maybe you'll have to follow up after as well with a little more info too. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions here. So I've got from Justin, what is the most challenging aspect with IaaS with regards of trying to transition workloads between the major providers such as Azure, AWS, Google, and so on?
Traditionally, it's been cost. Like if you're moving from like AWS to Azure, but Google made their announcement I don't know, it's probably like a couple months ago at this point, basically saying there's no egress cost. The other one, I think it just went live today, was AWS now saying if you're migrating from AWS to Azure, they will not charge you egress costs as well. So that's historically been the biggest problem, but that seems to be being mitigated, at least from the cloud service provider side. So I would say the next biggest problem is how you take, and this is a data center cloud service provider conversation, is how you take the policies from environment A and have it be applicable to the other environment because of differences around it. So
Right. Okay, my last question, since we're getting to the end, unless we get anything else that pops in the next, 20, 30 seconds, I'm just going to ask you, if someone does want to get started right away or they want to learn more about Rubrik, get involved, where should they go? What's the best first step for them to take?
Good question. I mean, I would say the Rubrik.com site is great. There's a lot of information out there. I think our teams have done an amazing job of summarizing the complete platform we have around the solution as well. If you need to reach out to me directly, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Drew Russell. Put you in touch with whoever works on that side too. So.
All right. Awesome. And I do want to remind everyone out there, we do have a handout tab. So just where you see the questions, there's also a handout tab there. And Rubrik's got a data sheet for you to download. It is Rubrik for Cloud Native Protection. You can automate backup and get rapid recovery at scale across your hybrid and multi-cloud environments. It's nice. It's just a couple of pages, visually pleasing, nice infographics in there. So go in, grab that, and I think with that, Drew, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. This was fun.
Awesome. And don't hesitate to reach out to Drew directly, as he mentioned, if you have questions, but we'll also be able to follow up with you if you did have questions or requested any additional information from Rubrik after the fact. So that'll all work itself out. One final goodbye. Thanks so much, Drew. All right, so now we have some prizes. Yeehaw. We have 3 $300 Amazon gift cards to give away, and quick reminder, you must be present at the webinar to win. Someone earlier mentioned, why not $330 gift cards? Well, you know what? I'm not sure we can do that, but I'll look into it for you. That said, so here are 3 lucky winners. The first $300 Amazon gift card goes to Courtney Hardy from Ohio. The second goes to Chris Taskey from Illinois. And the third and final goes to Patty Watson from Massachusetts. Congratulations. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And do not forget that there are still chances to win that best question card, or you might be selected. So if you threw in a question, sit with anticipation. We'll reach out about that one too. And if you are on the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, EcoCast, or MegaCast webinar, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us by email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers from Rubrik, as well as our keynote, and Keith for making that happen and making this EcoCast possible today. Special thank you to all of you for attending and asking some great questions. I had so much fun just being here with you all and learning about this topic. If you really enjoyed your time today and you want to check out something similar, we have an upcoming MegaCast, which is actually tomorrow. So mark your calendar, carve out a little bit of time. This is preventing phishing attacks. We'll have our friends from Rubrik back, but also presenters from OpSWAT, Zscaler, and Lacework. That is at 12 p.m. Eastern or 9 a.m. PST Pacific time. I hope to see you all again soon. And with that, have a magical day.